We'll put the spotlight on how fuel is taxed in this country, especially by states. Is there scope for both the state governments and the central government to look at tweaking the tax structure for petroleum products? Let's joining us for that special debate, two guests, Bibek Debroy, Professor at the Center for Policy Research in New Delhi, and S. Narayan, former Finance Secretary and Petroleum Secretary as well, joining us live from Chennai. Mr. Narayan, I want to kick it off with you because at the end of the day, politics can never be detached from oil economics, can it?
I think I'll come about it in a slightly different way. I think the decision taken to increase the oil prices or petrol prices today is a good decision. And I think if at all there's going to be a rollback, that's not going to be a good decision. So to that extent, the linkage between oil economics and politics is not necessarily a good one. I would have been happy if they had also increased the diesel prices and given some kind of an increase for LPG prices as well. Because with the rupee deteriorating against the dollar, the costs of importing oil and importing diesel are going up considerably, and it's very important that all of us should share that burden. So I do think that oil economics should rise above politics, because merely playing politics with oil is going to hurt all of us, all the citizens, in the long run.
Don't play politics with oil, says S. Narayan. Bibek Debroy, the big question, is it a good idea to cut taxes on oil, both at the state level and at the centre?
Yes, absolutely. But I think the question to ask is it being done incrementally, or are we piling up a backlog over a period of time? Because if we do it incrementally, then the increases, the changes in either direction, they are smaller. However, if you don't do it for a length of time, then it tends to pile up. So the answer is yes, of course, it is possible, but it has to be handled properly.
Of course, it has to be handled properly, Professor Debroy, but the question is, can we afford it now? We're looking at this 7.5 rupee increase in petrol prices. Should states look at this right now?
Yes, we can afford it right now. It depends on what you mean by can we. I presume you're talking about the political economy. Now, the political economy is less for petrol. It is much, much more for diesel and also for LPG. I think to make it politically acceptable, one also has to address a few other issues, which is the lack of transparency in indirect taxes and the lack of transparency about how prices of crude oil are getting translated into prices of retail products. So to make anything transparent, you need to reform these, and then of course people tend to realize why it is necessary.
Okay, you're raising the issue of transparency. Dr. Narayan, I want to raise the issue with you about just revenue generation. I mean, at the end of the day, fuel taxes are one of the biggest revenue generators for the government. Any tax, should it not be viewed in the context of its impact on India's current fiscal health?
I think there is a great opportunity to reduce taxes, because I did see that almost 50% of the price of oil, petrol that you pay at the counter is accounted for its taxes. I think that is too large. I think for the same price you can get, I would say, reasonably priced oil all over the world, provided the taxation is removed. So there is a great opportunity to reduce the tax burden, and government should look at other sources of revenue. Oil cannot be the only source of revenue.
Bibek Debroy, why does the government adopt a better duty structure when specific taxes are dominant instead of the ad valorem structure, so that rising crude prices don't impact the taxes as well?
Oh, absolutely. I have never understood why, despite several suggestions in assorted committees that have recommended tax reforms, why we have decided that petroleum products and also incidentally alcohol and liquor need to be outside the ambit of tax reform. Everything should be part of tax reform. Everything should be converted into straight ad valorem taxes away from specific duties. And you've effectively answered the question, which is that the government does not want to do that because it's a fairly convenient revenue option.
S. Narayan, comment on that. Would you agree with Bibek Debroy? Is there a case for the government to adopt a more efficient duty structure at least?
If you do recall, sometime in UPA 1, 2004 or 2006, they did come in with specific taxes on oil as well as on diesel. For some reason, this seems to have been given up. But I do think that when the specific taxes were in place, they were working very well. So I agree with you that there's a great opportunity for going back to specific taxation and to make sure that the revenues are not disturbed, but at the same time, there's no increase in terms of percentage. I think there is a great possibility to do
okay,
this.
Professor Debroy, now it's a classical debate. Who should suffer? Whether it should be the government's direct balance sheet or the balance sheet of the companies that the government owns. Some level, this sort of reflects a fiefdom where the government does whatever it feels like as the largest shareholder.
Well, I think we are stuck in another vicious circle, which is even more important, which is the complete inability to figure out who are the people who are below the poverty line, the BPL households who need to be subsidized. The urban middle class, which tends to have very high decibel levels whenever prices of something like LPG or petrol tend to go up, they do not deserve subsidies. And because we have not been able to break this vicious cycle about who and determine who should be the beneficiaries of subsidies and who should not, we go round and round in circles. And that, I think, is much more important than whether the government funds things directly or whether it's done through an artifice or routed through oil companies. Of course, the simple answer is everything should be done directly through the budget so that one has transparency in that also.
Mr. S. Narayan, some may argue that resource-crunch states cannot quite copy the revenue-rich Goa model. So really, can we force them all? And if we don't, then we're going to have different states with huge differential on pricing.
I think one is looking at a larger picture. If states want to give free electricity, free food, free rations, and expect that to be paid for by taxation substantially from oil, there is an imbalance somewhere. There's an imbalance that the freebies that the states are giving away is being paid for out of this extra cost that is being put on oil products. I think there is a need to look at fiscal balance in a much more, I would say, conservative and a public finance manner to see how much subsidies can be reduced. If subsidies can be reduced, then can expenditure be reduced? If expenditure can be reduced, can therefore be an opportunity for reducing the petrol prices as well?
Professor Debroy, comment on that. Do you think it's going to be easy for other states to replicate the Goa model and reduce local taxes?
As long as we leave things outside the ambit of the tax reform agenda, unfortunately, yes. Because the original tax reform agenda was supposed to extend to all commodities. We are not really talking about petroleum products right now, but it was supposed to extend to all commodities and remove all discretion. The GST was supposed to be a standard rate, which would have removed the divergence across states. Unfortunately, that's not what is happening. And also, there are states which are bound to lose revenue, at least expect to lose revenue, in which case there can be a compensatory mechanism, which has always been on the agenda of the finance commissions.
Okay, Mr. S. Narayan, let you have the last word. Let's make a more compelling economic rationale for states to reduce these taxes. Will reducing taxes help mitigate the inflationary impact of a possible oil shock on consumers and the economy at large?
I do not think so. On the contrary, I do think that the kind of price increases that have happened will pass the inflation down and into the system fairly rapidly. You would see, for example, auto fares going up, you would see taxi fares going up, you would see sort of transportation fares going up, you would see therefore working its way down the ladder. You would see an inflationary impact. But that's not for me to say that the price increase is incorrect, because it has become totally unsustainable, the price at which we are buying.